GamingBolt presents 15 things you need to know before you buy Dark Souls Remastered. Praise the sun and prepare to die. Dark Souls 3 may have been the last game in the series, or so we've been told, but the franchise still has some life left in it yet, ironically enough. Dark Souls Remastered is making its way to the PC, Xbox One, PS4, and Nintendo Switch, which means not only is this the first time you can play the game on current-gen systems, it's also the first time you'll be able to play it on the go. In this feature, we're going to take a look at 15 vital pieces of information that make the upcoming remaster a must-buy for all Souls fans. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Switch resolution and frame rate. Being able to play Dark Souls on the go is a mouth-watering prospect in and of itself, but the Switch version of the game also has some visual enhancements to boast about. While the game's frame rate on the Nintendo Hybrid system will remain capped at 30 frames per second, its resolution will see a significant boost, or at least when you're playing the console docked, when the game will be rendered at 1080p. In handheld mode, the resolution will remain at 720p. PC resolution and frame rate. Dark Souls Remastered's PC version will, for obvious reasons, see the most significant visual upgrades. Players will be able to enjoy the game at a solid 60 frames per second, while the resolution itself will also be massively enhanced. How so? Well, on PCs, Dark Souls Remastered will be rendered at a native 4K resolution. Xbox One and PS4 resolution and frame rate. But what about the Xbox One and the PS4? As you can probably guess, while the systems won't be at the same level as the game's PC version, their respective versions of Dark Souls Remastered are still going to feature some pretty respectable visual upgrades. On the PS4 and Xbox One, the game will have a frame rate of 60 frames per second, and will be rendered at a 1080p resolution. On the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X, the game will have the same frame rate, but will have an upscaled 4K resolution. HDR support. Of course, the higher frame rates and better resolutions aren't the end-all be-all when it comes to enhanced consoles. There's also HDR support to consider. Fortunately enough, Dark Souls Remastered on the Xbox One X will indeed feature HDR support, so combining this with all of the other graphical enhancements we've already spoken of, and some we've yet to speak about, we're looking at a significantly better-looking version of Dark Souls. No HDR for the PS4 Pro. You may have noticed that we didn't mention the PS4 Pro when talking about HDR support. Well, that's because, sadly enough, Dark Souls Remastered on the PS4 Pro won't have any HDR support. Namco Bandai or From Software haven't given any official word on why this is the case, and it's hard to imagine why this has been done, especially since the Xbox One X version of the game does support HDR. Improved textures and lighting. But HDR support, improved frame rate, and better resolutions aren't the only visual enhancements Dark Souls Remastered will feature. All versions of the game, be it on the PC, the consoles, or the Switch, will include improved textures and lighting in order to make the game's world pop and look much more beautiful than it did back in 2011. It remains to be seen just how improved the textures and lighting will be, but from what we've seen so far, it looks like a notable improvement. Switch version developer. Dark Souls Remastered would have been a pretty big deal even if it weren't being made for the Switch, but the fact that the owners of the Nintendo console handheld hybrid get to play the game is definitely a pretty huge deal. The task of bringing the landmark title over to the Switch has been given to developers Virtuous, the very same team that handled the recently released LA Noire Remastered. PC, Xbox One, PS4 version developer. Virtuous, however, are only working on the game's Switch version. What about the PS4, Xbox One, and PC version though? That particular version of Dark Souls Remastered is being helmed by the team at QLOC. DLC. Given the fact that this is a remaster of a fairly old game, it should come as no surprise that Dark Souls Remastered will launch with the game's DLC, titled Artorias of the Abyss, included. The DLC was met with excellent critical reception by critics and fans alike when it launched back in 2012. And given the fact that it adds about 8 to 10 hours worth of extra content to an already meaty game, we're pretty excited to be able to play through it once again. Price point. When Dark Souls Remastered launches on May 25th for the PS4, Xbox One, Switch, and PC, you'll be able to purchase it for $40. That is, of course, pretty much the standard price for remastered releases these days, but for those who've never played the game before, Dark Souls and its DLC for $40 sounds like a pretty sweet deal. No discount for original owners. Over the last few weeks, a few rumors had been doing the rounds on the internet that suggested that Dark Souls Remastered on the PC will be sold at half price to those who have already purchased the game's original version. That, however, will not be the case. So if you already have the original Dark Souls on PC, you're not going to be able to purchase the remaster for 20 bucks. You're going to have to pay the full $40. Amiibo. Praise the Sun, a Dark Souls amiibo. Solaire of Astora is a pretty well-known and well-loved character from the first Dark Souls game, and he's getting his very own amiibo. But what will it do within the game itself, other than being a pretty cool collectible that you might want to purchase regardless? By tapping the amiibo, players can use the Praise the Sun in-game emote whenever and wherever they want. Online. Online is, of course, an important component of all Soulsborne games. While online in these games isn't like what you see in other typically competitive games, interaction with other players is a vital mechanic in Dark Souls. On all 4 systems, Dark Souls Remastered will have room for up to 6 concurrent players, as opposed to 4 in the game's original release. What's more, all of this will be done on dedicated servers. Password matchmaking. But what about when you want to play with your friends rather than random people online? Dark Souls Remastered will feature a password matchmaking system that lets you match with people directly. This system was used in Dark Souls 3 and, for the most part, it worked fine, so we're glad to see that the upcoming remaster is going to use it as well. No new assets. Where improvements to the original game is concerned, well, that's as far as it goes. It's been confirmed officially that Dark Souls Remastered will have no new assets, but will instead only be making use of improved and upgraded assets that were used in the original release. Beyond that, there will be no changes to the game's actual mechanics or gameplay, so expect the exact same levels of difficulty and the exact same combat that you remember from the original Dark Souls. And that about does it for this video. If you enjoyed what you watched and want to see more from GamingBolt, you can always hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell icon next to it. That way you will never miss any of our videos.